there, it's Gabrielle with you again today. I want to share with you another mixed media project. This one started out when I came across this old toy from my kids' supply of toys. They had a lot of Barbies when they were little, and this sort of mannequin thing was part of one of their sets. And they don't use it anymore, so I thought, you know what, I think I can use this in a mixed media project. Then I got to thinking, it's a shame to just use it up in one go and not have, be able to use it again. So I thought, I think I'm going to do this like a paper mache so I can do a number of these types of projects. So that's what I'm going to do with this today. Now, if you don't have something like this, you can also use an old Barbie doll. You can find those at thrift shops. Boy, pretty much anybody has one of these lying around. So just use the body from an old Barbie doll and you can do the same thing. So what I've done here is I've made some paste for the paper mache. It's basically 5 parts water, 1 part flour, and a little bit of salt in it. And so what I do is, by 5 parts I mean, for this amount I did 1.25 cups, and I heated 1 cup up of water, and the other quarter I mixed with a 1/4 cup flour, made a little paste, added it into that with some salt, heated it up, and got this paste. Okay, so then next thing I'm going to do is I took tissue paper, because I think tissue paper might be light enough to do a nice effect on this. Now, just in case, I think the shiny plastic would allow me to release the paper mache from it, but just in case, I'm going to use some petroleum jelly and just rub it all over, because I've heard that helps release anything from a mold, so hopefully this will work. So here I'm going to put it in hyperspeed so that you can see quickly how it comes together. I'm basically just putting some of the paste on the body of it, and I'm just plastering on the little pieces of paper, and I'm covering just the main front area, the sides, and just a little bit into the back so I can easily release it from its mold. So I'm continuing to layer all the little bits and pieces onto the mold, and I'm going to continue to layer till I have a nice opaque finish like I've got here. It's quite a few layers there. You want to make sure that your piece is firm enough to hold up. One thing I did notice was that this one I didn't take time to dry in between layers, so it came out a little wrinkly, which is okay for some designs, but I did a second one where I dried it between layers, and I got a much smoother effect. I don't know if you can see it on here, but one of them is a lot smoother than the other, and that's the one I'm going to use. So now I'm taking my frame and I'm tracing it out on a piece of parchment paper, and now I'm going to do a little trick to create a tree branch design. I'm using some hot glue, and I'm just going to squiggle lines till I get like a tree bark branch look to it. And why I'm doing it on the parchment paper is because I could have done it directly onto the framework, but at the same time I wanted to get this little edge that hangs over, and that wouldn't work with hot glue. So basically just keep going till you have a really pretty tree trunk look to it. as you can see, it removes easily from the parchment paper. You're going to be left with a few of those little webby bits from, moving your glue gun around, but just take a minute to clear those off so you get a nice clean look to your tree. Now I'm going to use some TCW white gesso that's from the Crafter's Workshop, and I'm just covering my whole piece with the gesso. And I'm also going to use the gesso on the glue. This creates a nice porous finish that the paint can attach itself to. Next, what I'm going to do is add some of this texture powder to my gesso, and it creates kind of this pastier, thicker, I guess textural element. And I'm going to use this palette knife to just randomly attach this stuff to the background. I want to go for kind of a broken plaster look when I lift up the next thing I'm going to do is add a little bit of brick wall look to this background. I'm using a stencil I designed for the Crafter's Workshop called the Tuscan Wall, and I'm using some modeling paste with that so you get kind of a strong texture to it. Just place wherever you want randomly on the back of this project, just trying to create interesting textures. I will, of course, add all of the products I'm using in the description area under this video with links as well, so you know where to find them. So if you're ever confused what I'm using, just take a look in the box below and you'll see. And another thing I want to remind you is try to also add some textures to the outside of the framework, because it's a deep frame, you will see the sides and you want them to look interesting as well. So after I dried the brick wall pieces, I decided to add some more texture using another stencil I designed for Crafter's Workshop called My Sunshine. One thing I want to remind everybody is when you do use stencils, try to wash them right away. Take a moment and rinse them off just so that they are usable for your next project. I always like to add a lot of interesting textures and elements to my designs. So what I'm doing here is I'm using some glossy accents. It's kind of a clear gluey substance. I'm putting it into the corners, and I'm slipping a piece of lace too on the middle of the project there, and I'm going to put some beadwork there as well. So yeah, why I'm laying the glue down is I'm just going to take some old beads I had lying around. It doesn't matter what color, and I'm just going to immerse them into this gluey mixture and paint them after with some gesso. We get to the fun part of the project, and that's adding our colors. Today I'm using a lot of Lindy's Stamp Gang products. This is one of my favorites, Steampunk Sepia. It adds a really nice antique look to any project. my bottle is, I think, almost empty. I use it so much. So I'm spraying my canvas with it, and I'm also spraying it onto the figure, and I'm also going to be spraying it onto the tree branches. The next color I'll be layering on is Lindy's Treasure Island Aqua. I really like this color because its base is kind of a deep walnut, so it gives a little bit darkness to the background. And I like to add some extra water to it so that it kind of runs into all the creases of my texture elements on the background. So this color from Lindy's is a pretty cool color because even though it has browns in it, it also has aqua colors in it because of the mica powders in the paint. Now I'm adding more of an aqua element by using some Tim Holtz. It's a flat paint. It's, I believe, called Tumbled Glass. So I'm just going to rub that in just, randomly different areas of my project. Also looking to hit a lot of the relief areas that were created with my stencils. It just brings them forward more. I should also mention that the colors are really hard to see on this because my lighting is so bright under which I work here, but you'll see better pictures later of it when I show still shots. So here I'm using a really fun product by Lindy's. It's called Magicals. It's just a powder, and you just spray water on to develop the color in it. This one, I believe, was Bratwurst Brown, and I just wanted to get a little deeper, richer color in the corner, so that's providing it for me. So here's a step I often like to use on a lot of my projects. I'm using some walnut stain ink by Tim Holtz, and I like to just run it along the edges of my projects. It gives it a nice finished framed look, and it kind of frames the other colors that you've sprayed onto the project. So now we're going to create the clothing for the little figurine, and I'm just using some cheesecloth, some wrinkled up pieces of cheesecloth, and I'm using the same color elements that I used in the framework. So I'm using the Treasure Island Aqua, Steampunk Sepia. I'm also adding Cape Cod Coral, and I wanted more of a pinkness to it, so I used some Papa Pink in the magical powders from Lindy's, and I'm just kind of rubbing it into the cheesecloth, so I'm getting kind of this rainbow of colors going through. So I felt I needed more aqua in it, so I also added some T-Bird Turquoise to the material to give it just a little bit more of a rainbow effect. And then looking at my project here, I realized I think I want more of the aqua in the framework, so I added some aqua to that T-bird turquoise. Here I'm just highlighting some of the textural elements with some of the white gesso. Now, to add a little bit more of an interesting design element, I'm using a stamp I created for 49 in Market. It's called Postcards from Paris, and I'm just using the scripted part to add a little bit of background writing to the design. And I'm also going to use a bit of the post elements as well. It's just to add more interest to the design. I should also mention that I'm using an archival ink, so when this gets hit with water, it won't run. Again, I'll list the products I've used in the description area below. Now it's time to add my tree branch onto my project, and I like to use Tombow liquid adhesive. This stuff, you put it on and you let it sit for a few minutes till it becomes tacky. Then you can add it to your project, and it's easy to move it around a bit until you get it right in the right spot you want it. And once it sits for a while, it dries permanently. So next I'm going to use that scrap of cheesecloth with the colorful paints on them. I'm going to create an outfit for this figurine. I'm adding a little bit of the Tombow glue to the figure just so that the cheesecloth will adhere nicely to it. So just play with it a bit, see what colors you would like where. You see me fiddling a fair bit here because I just want the right color for each piece. But I'm just going to lay on the one piece, snip it, and I'm just going to keep layering sort of little strips of the cheesecloth to create the dress. So once I feel like I've laid enough strips down that create a nice skirt, I'm going to take a strip of the cheesecloth and create kind of a waistband for the outfit. And that pretty much just creates the whole outfit. Then I just add a bow with some twine, a little bit of a flower on it, like a paper flower, and you've got your whole outfit put together. messed up a bit in filming here. I accidentally hit the button that flips the camera and I was taping the ceiling. But all you're missing here is that I glued the figure to the background, and I just used straight Aliens glue to do that, thick amount of it, and that seems to hold well. And here I'm just adding the finishing touches with the bow and the flower, and your project is pretty much done. Last minute option I used here was adding a little bit of glitter glue to give it more of a sort of whimsical look. You don't have to do this if you want to keep it simpler, but I just did because I thought it might be interesting looking with that on it. And your project is pretty much done. I hope you enjoyed this. As I said, you'll see in the still shots, you'll see the colors better for the project because I took those in outside light. And I hope you'll give it a try. I have everything I used in the description area below. Thanks for watching.